So case number 1, and I didn't give you guys any histories. How cruel and awful. But, you know, in soft tissue, a lot of times it's soft tissue, mass, thigh, right? There are some differences, and the history and the age can guide you a lot. There's some things that never occur in kids, or never occur in old people, or never occur in the skin, or never occur in the retroperitoneum, and that can help a lot in soft tissue pathology. But a lot of things too are patterns, and learning the patterns is the tricky part of soft tissue because there are a lot of tumors, a lot of entities. They all have weird overlapping sounding names. So I threw you guys a little bit of a softball at first. Now, no pressure. Now, if you get it wrong, you'll be like, oh, it's the worst. So what's this one? It's such a beautiful example. You got this lobulated thing, and you don't have to describe it. You can just tell me what you think it is. A couple lobules here. Hibernoma. It's a beauty, isn't it? Oh, swoon. I never get this in molluscum, man. Although I see molluscum a lot more often than I see hibernoma. So hibernoma is a tumor composed of brown fat, right? And brown fat, as Van, who I see is on this video, Van Hung sees all the time, right? Because it's in babies. Occasionally you see it retained in adults too. Brown fat is made of 3 different cell types, and hibernomas are made of 3 cell types, okay? And this case is perfect because it showcases all 3 of them beautifully. Number 1 is regular mature white fat, adult fat, okay? Mature adipocytes in here, sometimes of varying size. Number 2 is these multivaculated bubbly cells that look a lot like lipoblasts, right? They have lipid bubbles in them, but unlike, say, a pleomorphic lipoblaст, they don't have big ugly nuclei. They have uniform round nuclei, which I think we can see here. Yeah, there's no nucleus in this section, this plane of section for this one, but the nuclei will look similar to these. They're round, uniform nuclei, and they have central prominent nucleoli. That nucleolus is normal for hibernoma, okay? Don't get worried or think that's atypia. That's normal. And just like in a lipoblast, because these are lipid bubbles, they are clear and they're very sharply circumscribed, and they indent the nucleus because they're not compressible and they push everything else out of their way. And I've got a video on my YouTube channel about how to identify lipoblasts that kind of talks about that concept. So even though these are not lipoblasts, these do have lipid bubbles in them that indent the nucleus. So these vacuolated cells in dermatopathology, they're taught as mulberry cells because they look like mulberries are kind of like blackberries or raspberries, but bigger, and they grow on trees. I don't know. There might be a French name for them that probably sounds much more beautiful. But in any case, these multivaculated cells are cell type 2. And then number 3 are the cells that have this granular pink, reddish pink cytoplasm, kind of variable amounts of it. And sometimes you can see kind of a mingling of the bubbly cells with the granules in the background. What are these little granules? Why do these cells look so red and grainy and beautiful? Yeah, they're packed full of mitochondria, right? And the interesting thing about brown fat, and you can try this out once we get back to having cocktail parties and see if your friends like it, is that the mitochondria in brown fat have their electron transport chain decoupled. Remember back in biology in college how you learned about the electron transport chain and then it never was useful again pretty much since? Well, actually, it's cool because it's supposed to make ATP, right? But in brown fat, supposedly, the electron transport chain is decoupled from the ATPase. So as the electrons move down the chain, instead of making ATP, they just make heat, make extra energy. And the idea is that bears have extra brown fat and it makes them warm in the winter and they hibernate and thus hibernoma. And I don't know how we know that any of this stuff is true, but that's what's said, okay? That's what the story is. And it makes a real nice story that I think is cool if you're like a science nerd like me. So anyway, the thing that is also important to know is that while this hibernoma is very rich in these red, grainy cells packed full of mitochondria, not all of them are. Some hibernomas have mostly white fat and just a little bit of the reddish cells or the multivaculated bubbles. So all 3 of those cell types can be present in varying proportion in hibernoma. These tend to occur in young adults. They tend to be decent size. Sometimes it can be 5-10 centimeters and down in the deep musculature. Even though they are taught in dermpath, I have never yet seen one of these in the dermis or even the subcutis, honestly. And I've seen a lot of soft tissue tumors now. So maybe like Chris Fletcher or somebody has who's seen way more than I'll ever see. But I've never seen one in the skin. And if you're, have any of you seen it in the skin ever? Van, have you seen a hibernoma of the skin? Cool. Okay, and if you're watching this online, please let me know in the comments if you've seen one of these before. And I'm probably, if I look in the literature, someone's reported like a series of 3 cases or something. But in any case, so know that the composition can change. They're real rich in vasculature, And these are going to be hot on PET. The PET will pick up brown, even normal brown fat is hot because these are mitochondria are active, right? And so they're PET avid a lot of times. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out, sorry, I caught my microphone. Can you guys still hear me? Yeah. Good. Okay. And the other thing that I wanted to point out was something good, I thought. Oh yeah, because they're larger, deeper, fatty tumors, they often on imaging get mistaken for liposarcoma because they look like a big, deep, fatty tumor and have areas that are not normal fat consistency. And so they can, to those who are not aware, they can be concerning for liposarcoma on imaging. So sometimes they're concerned about these, and these are totally benign. There are rare times you can see brown fat. I've heard that it can happen in well-diff liposarcs. I don't think I've ever seen one yet that has it, but people who train me told me they've seen a few. And then also, I have seen sometimes in the high-grade form of myxoid liposarc, you can have brown fat differentiation. I've seen that like once or twice. But otherwise, when you find this, I mean, these are benign, and you're done. The diagnosis is there. Hibernoma, and that's just a real beauty. I can't look away. It's so good.